Hey, what's up, y'all? Welcome back to the channel. Today, I want to talk to y'all about something bad that happened to me in China. This was actually the worst thing that has ever happened to me here. And I want to share that story with y'all today, right after this intro. All right, y'all. So, if you're new here, my name is John. I'm an American that's been living here in Guangdong, China for about 14 years now. And today, I just want to share with y'all something bad that happened to me, the worst thing that has ever happened to me while living here in China. So I want to start this video off first and foremost by saying, the reason why I'm sharing this is so people can actually realize that, we are actually all alike. It doesn't matter if you're American or Chinese or you're Russian or you're British or whatever you may come from. We all have some similarities, and you can tell by the story what some of those may be. So, this was a few years ago, back whenever COVID first started, because at that time I was actually traveling. I was on vacation, actually. I was in Cambodia and with my girlfriend, and we heard the news about the COVID situation, and so we hurried up and ended our vacation early and booked a flight back to China. And so when I came back into China, it was like 2 days later they closed the border and didn't allow people to come back in. So I got back just in time. Now, during this time period, I was working and I had two businesses open as well. I owned a small cocktail bar, and I also have a fitness supplement business where I import fitness supplements and things. And so the first thing that initially happened was I had to close my bar per the government regulations. It wasn't just because I was a foreigner and stuff like that. Every business was closed. It doesn't matter who you were. Shopping malls, restaurants, everything was closed. And so I had to close my business. I wasn't allowed to open the door. And this went on for a year. So for one whole year, I couldn't open my door to customers. So I couldn't make any money from my business. So I end up closing my business and my other business, importing the fitness supplements and stuff. This was an online business, but I also had to close this business too, because all of the gyms were closed. And also 95% of my customers were foreigners, and they all left China and went back home and things like that. And so I had to basically close that business too. Well, I didn't close it, but this business wasn't good enough to make any money. So, I ended up basically losing two businesses. My job, I didn't lose my job. Okay, when this happened, I kept my job, but the school was closed. But I did my work online from home, so I was still getting paid, and things like that. I was just working from home, which wasn't a big deal. But we're getting to the bad part now. As time went on, I think they started implementing lots of different measures about when it comes to health related things. Everybody had to have these QR codes and all this stuff to enter places and things like that. And at that point in time, it just really started to become a hassle to even go anywhere, because when they first implemented the system, it wasn't very foreign friendly. Foreigners couldn't even register on it at first due to I don't know, just the setup of it. You couldn't register with a passport, and then eventually they fixed it where foreigners could use it. And then but it just became such a big hassle, so everywhere you wanted to go you had to show this thing, this health check thing and all that. But as time progressed, I think people just started becoming just more and more all this news is coming out and things like that. And so people really started to point to foreigners it was almost our fault that this thing happened. And because the situation in America at that time was really bad, and people were protesting and all this other stuff. So a lot of people seen these things in the news, and so they had these assumptions that the foreigners have this idea we're sick or something like that. And so a lot of times when I went places, I wasn't even allowed to enter places. People say, oh, you're a foreigner, you can't come in, even though I have the health code. My code says I haven't been in any place where there's sick people And at the time, I'd been here like 10 or 12 years, or 11 or 12 years, something like that. And so, I didn't go to America during this COVID period. So I was never home, and I was never, actually, I've never, to this day, I've never tested positive for COVID, which is kind of funny. But anyway, I was never in any place where there was like the COVID, like where my neighborhood was locked down or something like that. I was never in that place. I was always able to go about freely, just there was nowhere to go because everything was closed. But I experienced a lot of racism in that aspect, because people were like, oh, those foreigners, they're sick, and they can't come in this place. You're a foreigner, you can't come in. Even at my own house, like the place where I live, the security guard was letting Chinese people just come in, and then I tried to go in. He's like, you can't come in. I'm like, well, I live here, dude. My house is here. I've been living here for several years. He said, no, you can't come in. I was like, where in the hell am I supposed to sleep? So it was becoming a serious problem. And then the worst thing that happened, I've been here for a long time, and I can tell people's like accents, like kind of, where they're from or not from. And so anyway, I was at my house, like I parked my car in the underground parking, and I was in the elevator going up to my house, and somebody, like a family, got on there. When the family got on there, it was like a guy and his wife, and they had a kid, like a little girl, maybe like, I don't know, 8 or 10 years old. So they got on the elevator, like on the first floor. I was already on the elevator, and the guy like grabbed his daughter's head and like put it up against his stomach and like raised his shirt up and put her head underneath of his shirt. And he was like, oh, you can't breathe the air, the foreigners are sick. And at that time, I was already so angry and tired and frustrated, because this has been going on for like 2 years. And then, so I asked the guy, like, where are you from? He's like, oh, I'm from Hubei. He said, you foreigners need to go back home. You all come here with the sickness. Go back home. Go back to your country. And I asked the guy, like, so, well, how long you been here? He said, I've been here for 3 years. And I was like, dude, I've been in this city for 12 years. I didn't go home. I've been here for 12 years. I've been here longer than you. You go home. You go back to Hubei. I'm more local than you. And so then the guy started shouting at me, and then we started shouting. So we just kind of got in an argument over this whole situation. But, we didn't like fight each other, just like a verbal argument. And so anyway, the next day, the local police came to my house, and they knocked on my door. When I came out to greet the police, they basically treated me like almost like a criminal. And they told me, this like, you have to go quarantine, and we're here to take you to quarantine. And I said, like, quarantine for what? And I showed them my health code, that my code was green. I haven't been sick. I get tested every day. I actually explained to them, I was like, look, I'm a teacher across the street, and my job requires me to get tested every single day, and I can show you the results. And I showed them the test results where I've tested. It has the whole back history. And I showed them the results where I did the COVID test every single day, never tested positive. They didn't care. They basically said, you have to go quarantine. And I was like, well, why can you make me quarantine when I've never been sick and I'm not sick? And they said, well, the neighbors said they're scared to live here because you live here. They said they're scared to live near foreigners. They said, you have to go quarantine. You can't stay here. And so I basically argued with them, and then I told them I'm not going anywhere. I told them I'm not going to quarantine. I'm not sick. I've never been sick. I showed you the proof, and I said, just leave me alone, get out of here. And I slammed the door in their face. And so after that, they didn't come back. I didn't hear from them again. But about a week later, I actually packed my bags and I moved to a different location. It's like the area I was living near my workplace. It's a lot of, in China, I don't even know how to say it in English, but here in China, they call them YD-ren. They're like kind of like migrant workers. They're not local to the area. They come from other places and they come there to work. And there's a lot of those people living in the area. And so I packed my bags and I moved to actual like a local area where there's a lot of local people. And after I did that, I never had any problems like everywhere I went, all the local people were treating me just like them. They was like, hey, how you doing, whatever, blah, blah. I never had any backlash from local people or racism or anything like that from them and in that period of time. But those things like just really frustrated me. Now, I'm not saying this is anything bad about China or Chinese people, because I know a lot of Asian people who were living in America were going through the same thing. People were telling them these kind of things, telling them to go home and this and that. So, you know, people kind of have the same mindset. They think like, oh, this group of people did this, or this group of people did that. And at the end of the day, the whole world was affected by this thing. But at that point in time, that was probably my lowest point in China. And I think I was just so tired of the strict measures that I was like really like on the verge of leaving. I really was like so close to leaving. And I was kind of at a breaking point. Like I lost my businesses. I was experiencing lots of racism, just things like that. And right when I was just kind of like at a breaking point, like also, I think just because I was like in a negative place mentally, like every day you could just maybe feel a negative energy coming off of me. And it messed up a lot of things like with my relationship and things like that, I think. And so my girlfriend actually ended up leaving because I was like, I guess maybe just so negative all the time, like always in a bad mood because I was experiencing this type of behavior. So yeah, a lot of bad things happened during that time. But it's like as soon as I was on that very tipping point of wanting to leave China, they lifted all the measures and everything started slowly going back to normal. And then after that, I haven't experienced any problems. And one of the things that I realized since then, I know a lot of people who left China at that time and went back home, or they went to other countries to work. And they all talk about how much they miss living in China. So I guess I'm glad I didn't end up leaving, and I'm glad I stayed. And now everything's back to normal like it was before, before the COVID thing happened, and life is good now. But yeah, I just want to share that story to let everybody know that not everything in China is great, but also at the same time, the bad things that happen to you in China or in America or whatever country you may be at, those same bad things can happen to you anywhere in the world. So we can't blame China, we can't blame Chinese people or American people or any other people. We can't blame people for these things, or countries. We can't blame countries for these things. A lot of times it's just, there's some people just have a different mindset or a different pattern of thought, and we can't control the people's thoughts. So when we come across these negative things, sometimes it's also ourself that perceives it as really negative when it may not be. So it depends on you how you take these things, if you take them to heart or not, or if you just blow it off and say some people just don't know any better and just forget about them people, right? And move on with your life. And that's what I eventually ended up doing, and I'm glad I stayed. And that's really all I got to share. I just wanted to share that story with y'all about one of the bad things I experienced here in China. So let me know in the comments below if you have any interesting stories about China, or what are your thoughts about this point of time in China. If you are in China now and you're still here, let me know below. And watch this video here. YouTube says that's the one to watch next, so check that out. I'll see y'all on the next one.